Hey everybody, Robert with RC Archery, and you're watching Tuesday's Tip of the Week number 76. Today's video, we are starting our bow tuning series. This will probably be a couple weeks. I'm gonna break it down. This week, we're gonna be talking about finding draw length, our peak weight, holding weight, looking at draw stop timing, and just some of the basics to get that out of the way. I've also got a couple videos that I'm gonna film for us that'll be YouTube Shorts. These will come out later in the week, so if you aren't subscribed to this channel, make sure you do hit the subscription button and then turn the bell notification on so you get those alerts when these videos come out. I'm gonna start trying to do a few videos a week where these shorts will come out. This week, we're gonna be talking about peep sight, how to set and find the correct height to be able to set that peep sight up, some peep tuners to help you get it turned correctly. And we'll also be talking a little bit about using a bow press and our draw board and how all that kind of works together with finding draw length and holding weight and getting our bow set up. In the members video today, I'm gonna be going over what I check and what I am writing down in order to keep my bow shooting its best. So once I have everything set up perfectly, I take certain measurements and I write those down, keep them in the notes on my phone. I may write them by hand as well. That way, if something is ever off, it feels weird, I can go back and check all that and put it back into spec. And then I can just make sure that when I'm changing strings or something's going on like that, that I can get everything put back together as well. All right, getting everything started out. First things that we're gonna talk about today is how I am setting up a bow and what I'm looking for. So bare minimum, and what a lot of people do is they check their axle to axle length, and then they check their brace height. And they're using that as their determination factor of, is my draw length set up correctly? Is the let off set up correctly? And trying to get something into manufacturer specs. So I take those measurements, but I don't use those for my setup. I'm taking them purely as a way to just see how close things are because of curiosity and making sure something's not way out of whack. But what I do is I actually draw these bows back with a draw board, and I'm checking for peak weight and my holding weight. That helps me figure out my let off percentage, and I'll show you the formula for that later and let you see how that works. And then I use a verification by checking my draw length to make sure everything is correct with my mods or my draw stops, my let off, and everything that I'm doing. And the reason I do that is because bow manufacturers can fudge numbers a little on their draw lengths and peak weights and things like that. Even by IBO and AMO standards, they're able to get at least an inch, sometimes more, off of some draw length settings and what they're doing, depending on the way that they're setting them up. So we all know there's certain bow manufacturers that are known for having draw lengths that are usually long. It helps with your speed ratings. It helps with some numbers to be able to promote those. So let's get started, and I'm gonna show you what I'm checking on these and how all that correlates and works. All right, to get things started off, as I said before, I will check my axle to axle length and my brace height. I don't get too technical with it. I literally will hang the top of this measuring tape on the top axle, and then I'll run it down to the bottom, and I just measure from the top of the axle on the bottom limb and the top of the axle on the top limb as well. Roughly what I'm seeing here is 37 inches. This is a Supra Focus 37, so that should be 37. It's helping me know that yes, it's where it should be. For brace height, you're gonna measure from the dip in the grip here. So from this deepest part, usually up next to the shelf, you're gonna measure from there to the front of the string closest to the bow and just measure it at a 90-degree angle. And this one is about 6 7/8. Means I'm close. So that's what we're looking at. That's how I'm checking my axle to axle length and my brace height. From here, I'm putting my bow on my draw board, I'm drawing everything back. I'm watching for my peak weight reading, and then I'm watching till my stops are almost about to touch. And then I can micro adjust with this bow press in order to really narrow it down and get it to where the stops are exactly touching. And the good thing with that is you get to see what we're looking at on our timing and what we're looking at on the stops. From that point, I can get my peak rating and my holding rating here as well. I'm going to use that where I'm gonna find my let off percentage. So the formula for that is your peak weight minus your holding weight divided by your peak weight again. That's gonna give you a number in decimal form. You're gonna take that number and multiply it by 100, so it moves the decimal place 2 points to the right, and that's gonna give us our percent value. So when we're looking at my bow here, I am roughly 56 pounds peak weight, little over 13 pounds holding weight, getting somewhere around 76% let off. And for me, I've got my bow set up on 75% let off, but I'm a little over 28 inches in draw length. I'm a little bit around 28.25 generally with this bow. So there's a few ways to check your draw length. If you're just wanting to check it for yourself and keep track of everything and just have an idea of what you're doing, you can absolutely just hook the measuring tape to the front of the riser, run it back to where you're looking at the front of the string here, and that can be your measurement. If you need to know AMO, draw length measurement, so the standard that every manufacturer goes off of, you're actually gonna measure that from the deepest part of this grip, which usually lines up to the front side of the burger button hole on the opposite side. You can measure from there all the way back to the front of the grip, whatever that measurement is, then you add 1 3/4 inch to that. I've actually got a tool that I am making. I'm waiting to get the first prototype out that's going to help with this. It will actually attach into the burger button hole and run it back with a slide so that you can tell exactly where your draw length is without having to add up that 1 3/4 inch. But I'm using my draw length to check everything on here just to verify, okay, I'm pretty close on my let off, pretty close for peak weight when I've backed out my limbs, and does my draw length match up with that? And if it does, then yes, I know that I'm doing really good. Now let's talk about scenarios if that doesn't work. All right, so one thing to think about and look at, is my draw length and my peak weight and my holding weight matching up? If it is, great. If not, if my peak weight is too high, then generally what I am hoping to see is that my let off percentage is also too high. And usually what that is telling me is that these cables are too short for where I'm at. And it's adding extra peak weight to the bow, and it's over rotating my cams and adding more let off percentage as well. It's making a bigger valley happen. If I am looking at my peak weight and I am too light, and hopefully my holding weight is, or my let off percentage rather, is going to be less than what it should be. So say if I'm supposed to be at 75, I'm looking at like 70% or 72%. Then that generally means these cables are too long. It's causing us to not have enough pressure and preload to our limbs, and it's causing us to have our cams a little under rotated. Now we can also have the string not be the correct length and cause some issues for us too, but generally this string has less effect on our peak weight and on our let off percentage than the cables. So generally what I'm looking at in that scenario is I'm gonna check that first, especially if my peak weight isn't high enough and my let off isn't high enough, my draw length should be a little short. So if we're looking at that now, if I have something completely off on draw length and my peak weight and holding weight is off as well, but not as bad. So say I'm supposed to be at 28 inches on here and my draw length is actually at 28, almost 28 and a half or something, and I've double checked my mods that I'm absolutely supposed to be on 28, and my draw stop is absolutely set to where I'm supposed to be on 28, then I know that I've got some issues with maybe the string being too long, and I've got to adjust on that too. So you shouldn't have a lot of those issues. It should be very minute issues, especially when you're getting a new bow from the manufacturer, or if you're getting new strings and putting on your bow as well. You shouldn't really have any issues. But for troubleshooting and what we're looking at, I want to make sure we talk about that. All right, the next thing that we are going to talk about is initial setting on our arrow rest, where our arrow is in relation with in and out and up and down. So this matters a lot, and what I will say is it works really well if you have a vise like I do here. I can set this bow in here, I can get everything level with this bubble when we're looking at it. I know it's all okay, and then I don't have to worry about that anymore, and I can just focus on the rest. You don't have to have that. I have done it without a vise for years, but it does make it a lot simpler. So find one of those or find a way to make one. It makes it a lot better. If you're running a blade rest, your blade is going to already be up and you're just gonna kind of be sitting there and you're gonna be looking at it. If you have a dropway like what you see with me, what you're gonna have to do is loosen off this string here to where this dropway will just naturally be sitting straight up and down, where you can see exactly what you're looking at with the rest and with the height of the arrow. But generally what I do with bows when I'm setting them up is I run the middle of this arrow through the middle of the burger buttonhole. And the reason I'm doing that is because initially I want to see how this bow is going to aim and how it's going to set up, knowing that I'm pulling decently through the middle of the bow. For most of these bows that are modern today, most of them have the center of the burger buttonhole is the center of your pulling point. If you want to check and see what yours is, I would recommend measuring axle to axle, taking that number in half and just kind of getting an idea there. Not all of them are set up that way. Some of them are set up where the midpoint of the grip is the balance point in the middle of the bow, and some of them are set up completely different. One thing that I will say and note is that if you have the same model bow but a different length, so a different axle to axle length, go ahead and check both of those, because I have seen and I have had people report to me that just because you have the 36 model of a bow and there's a 39 model of the bow, doesn't mean that they both pull from the center. So check that out. But generally that's what I'm doing. I'm setting this up to where this level here is going to be in the middle, as well as the other one where I'm running through the center of the burger buttonhole. And then when I am measuring for in and out to start with, there's a couple ways that I do this. One of them is I take the center line of the limbs up and down and I measure it and put it all in there that way. Another way that you can do it is you can take a measurement from the riser to the edge of the arrow on the front and same measurement on the back, and you can get that even. And then that's a very solid starting point for us to look at as far as setting this up and getting everything working for us to pull down the middle and set up down the middle for tuning later on. All right, the last thing that I'm going to talk about is our stops when they're hitting and what we're looking at on that. Generally speaking, on most of the bows today, they're dual cam bows. You want to have a baseline of this top stop and the bottom stop hitting the cables at the same time. So getting to your full draw position at the same time. Now, what I do from here is creep tuning, and this may not be my final position. And also what I will say and give as advice too is sometimes if you have the top draw stop here hitting first by a small margin, so I mean 1/8 of an inch, something like that or less, that can at times help us pull a little bit more from the top of the bow, and it can also help us with our aim on target and holding up on the target as well. So if we're looking at this, that is one thing that we can check on, and we may want to dabble with that later on and have something hitting a head or something like that. Now, another thing that we can talk about really quick is I talked about having our D-loop set up in the middle of the burger buttonhole and pulling from the center. If you raise the D-loop up on the string and have the arrow in the top part of the burger buttonhole, you will have more leverage over the top of the bow. Some people like to do this. Depending on your shot style and what you're looking for, that can also help you hold up on target as well. So that is something to keep an eye on. And depending on the way your bow is designed, the riser geometry, and the way that it's coming in with your draw length modules, you may need to adjust to make it higher or lower in the burger buttonhole in order to make it tune for you and also to be able to hold for you. All right guys, that's gonna wrap up this week's video. Next week, I'm gonna get into paper tuning, bear shaft tuning, walk back, creep tuning, torque tuning, and all of that stuff. So we'll get into the lot of it. So this week, again, keep an eye out. There's gonna be some videos coming out over setting our peep sight and getting it turned correctly. And there's also gonna be a video that I come out with talking about using a bow press, using a draw board and a scale, what mine are and where they're coming out with, so that you can get all of that as well. And again, guys, the members video we're gonna be going over what I check on my bow and what I'm looking for with specs and everything. So appreciate you watching this video today. Hopefully this will help you when you're setting your bow up and what to look for and how to get some general ideas. I'm gonna go more in depth on a lot of these, but if you need to see a step-by-step process and totally in depth of what's going on, I do have an instructional video that I made a while back that I do sell. It goes over a complete bow setup from start to finish with tuning and everything, and it will help you know exactly what you need to do. If you're interested in that, my email is down in the description below. You can send me an email and we can talk about that, and I can help you get that set up so you can watch it as well. Appreciate you watching today, guys. I'll see you soon.